Good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you for being here and welcome to this Qual at Scale session, the first of two of our quick decoding session series. My name is Sven Ahn. I'm a senior client director at Humanate and I'll be your host today. And I'm joined by Angie de Koenig, who is a global client partner at Humanate, who'll be sharing her insights on reimagining qualitative research. Together, we will explore the latest developments in online communities and how leading brands are using them to stay ahead of the curve. We're incredibly excited to take you on this journey, on this fascinating story. Before we dive in, just a few quick practical notes. The session's being recorded, so you'll receive a recording shortly after the wrap up. And if you have any questions during the session, please use the questions tab on the right-hand side of your window. You can also upvote questions and you can react using emojis. And obviously for any comments or fun reactions, please feel free to use the chat. Okay, so scaling with soul, qual at scale. Well, I think we all sense and experience every day that the world is changing faster than ever. It's not just change that's happening, it's happening at an incredible pace. There was a recent Accenture study, and 72% of C-suite executives indicate that they expect even more change this year compared to last year, which is striking given that 2024 was already filled with disruption. So can we expect even more this year? That means more unpredictability, more shifts in behavior, and it also means more complexity. But that's just one side of the coin. The other, perhaps, is even more important. Um, the change is one side, but change is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. In the same Accenture study, 60% of executives indicated that they see change as a chance to innovate, grow, and to lead, because change brings limitless possibilities. And now with AI, these possibilities are amplified even further. If we want to unlock real opportunities, however, we need to first truly understand our audiences. That's more important now than ever because consumers today are complex, maybe more complex than they've ever been. We're all full of contradictions. For example, we're all hyper-connected, but statistics say people are lonelier than ever. And this is a challenge for brands. To stay ahead, we really need to understand and embrace these paradoxes. And this is where qual scale communities come in. They give us ongoing direct access to the people we want to understand. They let us go below the surface, but beyond sort of surface level opinions and into real behaviors, emotions, and needs, and the tensions between them. And that kind of deep, consistent connection is what helps brands truly decode complexity and move with confidence. And qual scale communities, they don't just help us to understand the paradoxes, they also help us to do it in a more agile way, because let's face it, the world's moving fast and we need to move fast too. But let's take a step back and think, what does fast really mean? Traditionally in insights, fast has meant getting research into the field as quickly as possible, turning around results fast, keeping things lean and efficient. But today, with all the new possibilities, especially within our communities, we think it's time to rethink what speed really means. Fast isn't just about spotting opportunities early, it's also about turning those opportunities into real, meaningful action for brands. So where do we go from here? Well, to keep pace with constant change and truly turn it into opportunity, we need to evolve how we approach research. Insight communities have been a powerful tool for years, but now the game is changing. With AI supercharging these communities, we're unlocking a new level of possibility, one that combines the depth of qualitative insight with the agility brands need to move forward confidently. There's a lot of talk right now about AI in qual research, and a lot of it focuses on AI moderated interviews that promise faster turnarounds. Yes, we can also do that in our communities, but we see that that's just one piece of the puzzle. We don't see AI just as a tool for efficiency. We see it as a catalyst to go deeper, move smarter, and reimagine what's possible in how we understand people at scale, which is the theme of our webinar. That's why we're making 3 key shifts in how we apply qual at scale in our communities. Shifts that elevate to the human stories behind the data and move us closer to real brand impact. I'll hand over now to Angie, who will tell us more about the 3 shifts.
Great. Thank you, Sven. So let's dive into the first shift. So what is really that first shift that we're going to make with our qual at scale community approach? Well, this first shift is really related to what we typically do when we are faced with uncertainty. Our instinct as insights professionals is often to gather more data, kind of believing that idea that we'll find the answers to all of our questions in the next study. And because, of course, we needed that input yesterday, we jump straight into the research, trying to move as quickly as possible. But the first shift we need to make with our qual at scale communities is to maximize what we already know today. Because the fact is that we have more data at our fingertips than we think. In some cases, we have years of community discussions, past reports, qual transcripts, and so on. The key thing is we are not fully leveraging it. It's quite a lot of untapped potential, and we are just keeping adding to the pile. And that's why we need to start seeing our communities differently, not just no longer as tools to gather new insights, but also seeing them as living archives of everything we've learned so far. Now, of course, in the past, it wasn't always that easy to make sense of all that information that we already had. But today, when we combine the power of our human expertise with AI, it's a lot more easy to connect the dots. And that's, of course, why we at Humanate created Mastermind. So Mastermind is a secure intelligence hub that is connected to our proprietary Square community platform. What Mastermind, in fact, does to the core and the essence of it, it kind of brings together different types of sources. And that can be previous community research, think research reports, transcripts, or even just the community conversations we have. But next to that, we can also enhance it with culture and trend input and even public data like social media data and customer reviews. So all of that information that we capture comes together in Mastermind. So instead of course, then having to search through all of the scattered data, we can now interact with these insights in a more direct and engaging way. We can ask questions and explore hypotheses. And while it's of course great to have a tool such as Mastermind at our disposal, and being able to ask all of these questions is of course just a starting point, because it's still a skill and an art to extract the right insight at the right time. We can ask ourselves, what do you ask masterminds? In what order do you ask it? And so on. And that's why we did not only develop Mastermind, but we also developed AI canvases. Like you can see here some of the right. These canvases, they help us to distill all of that content that we shared with Mastermind, but also extract the essence from it. So this canvas is designed with a very specific challenge in mind, from reframing insights all the way to identifying opportunity spaces. And while every canvas is unique and different, they have one thing in common, and that is also what makes them so powerful, and that is that they are grounded in human expertise and proven techniques. Because let's be honest, these challenges like identifying opportunity spaces, they are not new to us. We've been doing this for years, also pre-AI. So we know which techniques and which approaches work. What we've now done is we used all of that expertise and we translated those approaches that we know at work, we translated those into AI assistants and prompts so that we can now run that on Mastermind and tackle these challenges more efficiently. So let's take an example. When we now would start a new community cruise journey project, we no longer start from a blank sheet of paper. Instead, what we'll do is we'll go and take our experience canvas to map out what we already know from the existing community data that we have, potentially enriched with other data sources. And based, of course, on all that input, you can see here that we can already map out quite a significant part of the journey. And what you see here on the slide is just a summary and a high-level summary of it. So without, in fact, gathering any new data, we can already identify the different steps in the journey, the key touch points that people go through, but also the emotions, the frictions, and the unmet needs that people experience. Now, what is the benefit of this when we start our new initiatives with such a step is that, of course, that when we then do go into our community research sprint, we're not just reinventing the wheel. We're not repeating what we already know. Instead, we can build on this framework. We can immediately focus on the things that we do not know and really explore what matters most to our brand. Another example is concept development. What do we traditionally do when we want to do some concept testing? We take the concept like the one you can see here, an eye cream concept, luminous eyes. We test it with consumers and then we iterate based on their feedback. Well, now we can, in fact, using our concept optimization canvas and assistant, optimize the process that we go through. We can already start taking action before we go into concept testing with our community members. In fact, what we can do is we can start evaluating the concept upfront on different KPIs, all based on past learnings. And here you see a first assessment of the luminous eye concept on uniqueness. So you can see we already get an understanding of the concept's strengths, but also the watchouts. And then we can take it a step further and explore how we can optimize it. How can we make the concept more unique? What does this all mean is, of course, that we can start adjusting and refining the concept based on what we already know today. And as a result, when we then go into the research, we do it with the strongest possible version of the concept. Ultimately, we kind of reduce the needs for multiple iterations with consumers. And so as a result, we get to our endpoint, which is a validated concept, much faster, and we also increase the likelihood for success along the way. So while it might sometimes feel like slowing down when we take a moment to pause and reflect, the reality is that it really kind of enables us to go faster, more focused and more smarter throughout the whole insight journey. So the first major shift we need to make is to stop less is less rushing and in fact more maximizing, because in a world with already endless data, it's not about gathering more data, it's really about using the data that we already have in smarter ways. So that kind of brings us then to the second shift for our insights communities. And that is really, as Sven kind of mentioned, that in order to stay ahead in this ever-changing world, we need to act fast, but that is in fact also not enough. We really need to also get to real understanding. And that really doesn't come from just dashboards or data points alone. We really need to focus more on capturing the soul of our audience. Because when we don't, we really risk misunderstanding their needs, and that results then in potentially missing opportunities for innovation or communicating in ways with them that don't resonate. Now, recently, we see more and more of a focus of bringing quantitative scale to qual. It's kind of using AI to reach larger samples in qualitative research and to analyze the data more efficiently. But here's the thing, true impact doesn't really come from just talking to more people. Scale in terms of volume is just one side of it. The second and probably more important dimension of scale is going deeper. Because when we kind of think about it, do we learn more by speaking to 500 people for 15 minutes, so capturing 750 minutes in total? Or do we learn more by talking for 75 minutes to 100 people? The amount and the volume of data is the same, but the depth of the understanding is completely different. So just increasing the number of conversations we have is not automatically leading to richer insights. So if we really truly want to understand people and we really want to unlock all of those new opportunities for brands, We need to move beyond surface level exchanges. We need to get to a holistic contextual understanding. And that also means that we need to explore three different layers. We need to understand people's individual mindset. We need to capture the social factors that influence them, but also understand the cultural forces that are at play. And that's exactly what our qual at scale communities are designed to do. They don't just capture what people say, they also reveal how people think, feel, and change over time. And they kind of really provide us that kind of thick data that we need to get to real understanding. So, how do we actually go deeper? Well, in fact, it starts with spending more time in our communities with people. And whether that time is weeks, days, months, or even years, that time really builds relationships and ultimately trust. And that, of course, then helps people to open up and allowing us to peel back the layers. But more time also means that we can observe how people's behavior and attitudes shift in real life. It also means that we can tap into iterative learnings, build on previous learnings, and returning with new angles and exploring further. And finally, it also means that we can co-create with our members, really starting to shape ideas together across multiple stages. But depth doesn't only come from time, it's also about how we engage with our community members. And that's why our quality scale communities really blend a variety of activities and formats. Video, images, text, audio, all of that is being blended, and Sven will give you a good example of that later on. So we're really qual at scale communities, they kind of become this creative playground where we can mix mobile ethnography with storytelling exercises and mission-based activities. So it's not just about capturing what people think, but also what they feel and do. And so as a result, we then get a more intimate, more nuanced view on people's lives. But of course, we can now take that even further. With all the new possibilities that AI bring, we're way better equipped to decode that human complexity that we talked earlier about. AI can really act as a super assistant in our community, helping us to zoom out, analyze patterns, and make connections across time and data points that we couldn't connect before. So it really allows us to scale our analysis, but all without losing depth. It's kind of making it easier for us to see both the bigger picture, but not miss out on the personal stories that truly matter. Now, where AI helps us really to kind of have that zoom out lens, something else in our communities is helping us to get incredibly close to people. And that is, of course, the mobile nature of our communities. Because we're literally in the palms of people's hands, we can meet people exactly where they are. And that all in real time. And that really gives us something very powerful. We can get a sneak peek into their homes, into their lives, and into their routines. So it's not just about hearing about their experiences after the facts. In fact, we are seeing the world through their eyes as it is happening. And that way, we do not just understand them better, we can really also then more easily uncover opportunities as well. Now, of course, when we get this close to people, we are collecting huge amounts of rich human data in our communities. And if you just take the study that runs in the background, for example, we just here asked our community members to go back into their camera roll and share 4 meaningful moments of the past year with us. And the result was a massive data set of images, stories, and reflections. And all of that was captured in our community media gallery. Now, we might all agree, of course, that that type of input really leads to richer understanding, but there's also often that perception that this kind of research takes too long, and not just in collecting the data, but definitely also in analyzing it. And that's now where AI changes the game. With our visual decoding canvas, we can now move faster. And so the visual decoding canvas works in similar ways like the other canvases I showed you before. It is also grounded in proven techniques. In this case, ethno techniques, which we translated into AI prompts. So just like a human researcher really helps us to identify themes and patterns in the data, detect outliers, but it does so at scale and at an incredible pace. But when we kind of then combine this with our human expertise, we can even take it one level up. It's not just about understanding what is being shared, but it can also help us to detect what is missing. So here we are really then starting to connect our insights with expectations. And this way we can uncover gaps and blind spots that otherwise might have gone unnoticed. So now with our visual decoding canvas and ethno research, we really can accelerate our learnings, but also uncover deeper and more actionable insights. So it's really a good example of how we can scale with Soul in our communities today. Bringing AI into our communities is really not about losing the human connection. It's about amplifying that connection. It's about reimagining how we can collaborate with our community members so that we can get closer to them, listen more deeply, and all of that without slowing us down. So we talked so far about maximizing what we already know and scaling with Soul in our communities. So let's now focus on the third and final shift. And this really taps into that idea that often a lot of our focus and energy goes to getting to the insights fast. But we kind of need to ask ourselves, is speed to insights really what creates impact? And the reality is, it's probably not how fast we get to the insights, but it's about how fast we turn them into marketing outcomes. Because at the end of the day, the brands that win are the ones that act before their competitors do. Now, to drive action, we of course need to fuel empathy. It's not just enough for our stakeholders to understand the actions, the insights. We need to make sure that they also feel them, that they can step into the shoes of their audience. And empathy has been a key part in how we are connecting brands with their audiences through our communities. For example, we of course include quotes and videos in our reports, and we can also organize consumer connect events with our community members. But often, how we bring that empathy is still limited in scope. It's restricted to a specific place and a time. And this is in fact also where AI, especially combined with our communities, can open up new possibilities. Of course, there will always be a need for real human interactions, but now with AI, we can make these connections more accessible anytime, anywhere through audience avatars. So every study we run on our community, every community conversation really adds on to this rich data set of human stories and emotions. And now we can use that data to create avatars that represent our audiences, and all of that being grounded in real data, not just assumptions. And in doing so, we are not just creating stronger connections between our teams and our audiences, we're also really boosting the ROI of our insights and communities. Let's take this example of Beyond Meat. We collaborated with Beyond Meat to really understand the shifts in meat consumption and the perception of plant-based alternatives. And so during the study, we developed different personas. But instead of just presenting these personas back in the workshop, we brought these personas through life using audience avatars. So stakeholders in the workshop could engage directly themselves with these avatars. So they could ask questions, explore scenarios, and so on. And all of this, of course, happened in an intuitive, real-time engaging way where people were just chatting with their avatar. The result was that at the end of the workshop, the teams felt more connected with their audience, and it also really helped them to make the insights more tangible, kind of gave them a clearer picture on how they had to take their strategies forward and what adjustments they need to make. So if you want to learn more about avatars, make sure to also sign up for the webinar next week when my colleague Annelies will do a bit of a deep dive into this topic. Another way of making our community's insights more tangible are AI-powered workshops. So while workshops are of course not new, bringing AI into the workshops really takes them to the next level, as it can really help us to overcome some of those limitations that we have as humans. When we kind of think about it, one of the limitations that we have is that at the start of a workshop, we often play it safe. We gravitate towards the low-hanging fruit, and we stick to the more obvious ideas. And it really takes some time for us to get past that and truly come up with those unexpected and creative ideas. But now we really can accelerate that process when we combine the human expertise of the people in the workshop with the right techniques and AI. So AI really comes in these workshops a sparring partner, one that is not afraid to throw in bold and wild ideas. And by doing so, it really helps us to look at the topic from a completely different angle. It sparks ideas that we can build on as humans, and ultimately we then end up with stronger, more unexpected ideas. And a good example of this is our trend application canvas. So we really use this trend application canvas to take big picture trends and really turn them into clear opportunity spaces and marketing actions for brands. So for example, like this example where we translated the mindful minimalism trend into a potential product innovation for a pet care team. So in a way, we're moving our insights from theory into inspiration and action. So the goal here is really to help marketeers see more clearly how this trend could impact their day-to-day work, and more importantly, when they can take the action right now as well. So in a world where, in fact, AI is completely changing everything, the most powerful insights do not really come from replacing the human. They come really from elevating it. So in our quality scale communities, AI isn't here to take over. It's really here to expand on what is possible, helping us to go deeper, faster, but also especially stay more connected to real people in their real lives. So it helps us to bring more context, more empathy, and more relevance. And in doing so, we really get closer to our audiences and to, of course, also the opportunities that brings for our brands. And with that, I will hand it back over to Sven, who's now going to bring these shifts to life with a case study.
Thank you very much, Angie. So yes, as Angie said, we have a case study for you today as well, which brings some of the shifts or brings all of the shifts and some of the things that Angie has been talking about to life. The example we're going to talk about is a piece of work we did with Philips. Humanate and Philips teamed up to explore the next generation of parents. Gen Z are now entering parenthood. Bit scary, but they are. There was still limited knowledge about them, however, as parents. So to truly understand this unique generation, we took a mixed method approach. At the heart of it was our mobile first quality scale community that we've talked about, where we collaborated with Gen Z parents and future parents in the US and Germany over the course of 4 weeks. And we also illuminated our learnings with experts and creatives. And with all of this rich input, we were able to map the Gen Z parental mindset, identifying 4 key pillars in how they approach their parenting lives. So how did we crack the code of Gen Z parents? We obviously had to focus on their roles as parents and caregivers, but we also had to sort of go beyond that. We wanted to explore their individual lifestyles, the social aspects, and the cultural context they navigate, as Angie mentioned before, and the broader changes in the parenting landscape. Only by considering all of these elements that we could gain a holistic understanding of what really shapes their mindset and their expectations. So we took a mixed method approach. Now, one of the key factors in the study was that we didn't jump straight into the research. So we took a step back, as we saw in Shift 1, to first map what we already knew. And this helped us to enter the research phase more informed. So we started by running stakeholder interviews with Philips executives because we wanted to uncover existing knowledge, blind spots, and those really important I wish I knew moments. We also collaborated with some generational experts like Jori van der Berg, who is a Gen Z expert, who helped us shape early hypotheses and critically helped us also to distinguish what is actually linked to a generation and what's just a part of life stage. And finally, we also used Mastermind, the tool that Angie mentioned before, to run an AI-driven knowledge mapping. As Angie said, Mastermind is a central hub, and in this case, we could bring together lots of different sources, previous research, reports, transcripts of some qual activities that we had, some cultural input, some trend input, and in the theme of parenthood, also public sources like social media or Amazon reviews. So with Mastermind, instead of searching all of these different data sources, we could ask questions and we could interact with insights and with all of this material in real time. And by processing all this upfront knowledge, we were able to build stronger hypotheses, and we were able to zero in on the knowledge gaps so that we could make the research phase more focused, more valuable, and ultimately, we hope, also more impactful. And important because the theme of parenthood is big, it's complex, it's complicated, and we're understanding an entirely new generation of parents. And when I said scary before, I meant because Gen Z used to be people we talk to as the up and coming generation, and now they're becoming parents. Just hope that wasn't a misunderstanding there. Okay, so from there, we then went into our quality scale community, and that was the heart of the project. So we spent 4 weeks. We engaged with 115 people from the US and Germany, 2,200 interactions, I think we had. We had over 1,700 pictures and videos, a lot of material, rich material. And we wanted to look at the Gen Z parenting mindset, but we also talked to Gen Y because we wanted to also see, is there a difference between the generations? And also because Gen Z are just at the beginning of the parenting journey, we also included some Gen Zers who are not yet parents, but open to parenthood in the future. So we had the US and Germany, we had Gen Y parents as a comparison, we had current Gen Z parents, and we had future Gen Z parents. Okay. Our community, it works a bit like a creative toolbox. So it lets us look at the theme from lots and lots of different perspectives, lots of different dimensions on lots of different levels. We blend mobile ethnography with storytelling exercises and with mission-based activities. You see a whole range of different activities here that we were able to conduct on the Square community. One of my favorites, I'm not going to go through all of them just in the interest of time. One of my favorites was the letters to parents. So asking people to write letters to their own parents, describing parenthood and helping us to identify gaps in their own experiences. And one I'll refer back to later is the genie in a bottle activity. So we asked people to share 3 wishes that would make their parenting lives easier, helping us to identify their unmet needs. So with this mix of activities, we got a lot of rich data on people's thoughts, feelings, experiences, and behaviors. We also embraced the longitudinal nature of a community, and that gives us lots of opportunities to shape our learnings. So there's one area that we really wanted to explore, which was technology and AI in baby and parenting products. Right at the beginning of the community, we saw that the Gen Z parents were actually quite open to this. They quite like the idea of AI and tech. But it was difficult for them. It was very difficult to sort of understand how much innovation is acceptable without people being unsettled or, it even becoming a little bit creepy. And Gen Z parents, although they're really good at expressing themselves, they found it very difficult to articulate the boundaries with regards to AI and tech. That's maybe not so surprising given there's little awareness of how AI is currently integrated into baby products, and very little sense of what the future potential is. And that lack of knowledge makes it difficult for people to envision the full range of possibilities. So to dig deeper, we introduced what we call sacrificial concepts. This is a technique often used in design thinking. So these are ideas which aren't meant to be implemented. The purpose of them is to provoke feedback, to uncover deeper insights. So they're not intended as final solutions. They're sort of intended as stimulus material, really. So how did we do this? We, first of all, well, we used the genie wish activity I referred to before to fuel these sacrificial contexts. So we figured, let's think about what are people wishing for and use that to build some concepts. And in order to do that, so we wanted to be sure that we're addressing real needs that people have. And then to identify key themes, we applied our opportunity space AI framework. And with the canvases, we were able to distill 4 key themes. So there was a whole theme around sleep. There was a whole theme around nutrition. There was a whole theme around navigating household overload. And there was a whole theme about enhancing emotional connections and bonds. Now, just taking a step back, it's actually really interesting what happens when you ask plain AI the same question. The results are far less insightful. They're really generic, less inspirational, and sometimes sort of missing the critical theme of that actually are about children. So they sort of take the sort of general Gen Z themes and try to apply them to parenthood. So using AI alone isn't enough. We still need the human-driven data to deliver meaningful and actionable input. So here are some examples of the sacrificial concepts we put into the research. We used our AI ideation canvas to develop them, and we've developed products with varying levels of AI integration. Some sort of pretty subtle, relatively basic ones, to some quite extreme ones, like the one here top right, which is talking to a grandparent who has passed away. That was quite an extreme concept to put in, which is probably not something that you will ever develop, but it was an interesting way of finding where these boundaries are. So we shared the concepts with the community, really to provoke deeper conversations. And that's what we achieved. We got very different conversations just by sharing some of these ideas. And people could really articulate their boundaries a little bit more clearly. I'm not going to go into those boundaries. If you're interested in the outcome of the study, there is a book zine available for download on our website. So please feel free to download the full study results there. So Phillips understood that a lot of things about Gen Z, about the Gen Z parental mindset, but that's really just the beginning. In order to create impact and to drive action, it's clear that you need to go a step further. So we needed to do two things. The first thing is to fuel empathy. In a way, it's not enough for stakeholders to understand insights or read them. They sort of need to feel them. So in order to take the stakeholders beyond the data, we designed an empathy experience that added layers before and after the share out. So before the share out, the stakeholders received a pre-task to have a 15-minute conversation with a Gen Z parent in their life about parenting. This helped spark curiosity, push them out of the executive bubble, as we like to say, ensuring that they come to the session with an open mindset. And then after the share out, we organized some speed dating breakout sessions between stakeholders and Gen Z parents from the community. So stakeholders led those conversations, which allowed them, first of all, to more deeply connect with this next generation of parents, but also to dive deeper into the topics that really spark interest. Sorry. I got a little bit lost. And the results speak for themselves. So when we asked stakeholders to complete an impact survey after the experience, 9 out of 10 said they now better understand Gen Z parents, feel closer to the audience, and feel more confident in making informed business decisions. So the approach proves that by creating empathy experience, you don't only change people's minds, but you also influence their hearts, and above all, you influence their actions. So empathy is the starting point. But the second thing I'd like to talk about is turning insights into action, because as Angie said before, that's what we're measured against. Turning insights into action is what really drives impact. So when we make insights more tangible and more actionable, we empower stakeholders to apply them in their day-to-day work, not just to understand and to feel them, as we mentioned before, but also to use them. And this is where co-creation, AI visualizations, and AI-powered workshops come in. So Angie described them before. Here's an example of something we did specifically for this study, where we partnered with creatives in a global ideation contest. We tapped into IACA, which is Human8's creative crowdsourcing network, comprised of designers, copywriters, creative thinkers. And we asked them to design an app that addresses the needs of these future parents based on everything that we had learned. And the results were fresh, there was unexpected ideas, and above all, there was material here that helped to translate our insights into something that felt tangible, that felt real, and that felt relevant. So to close, yeah, let's wrap it up. The world is changing fast, and with that come both challenges and, more importantly, also opportunities. To keep up and stay ahead, we need to rethink our approach to insights. In the past, we focused a lot on gathering and crafting insights and doing it fast, but now there's more to the insight journey. It all starts with the now, where we maximize what we already know. We tap into existing knowledge before launching new research. And by doing that, we can move faster, we can stay focused, and we can make our work more strategic. Of course, it's still about connecting with our audiences to understand how we can wow them. That's still the heart of what we do. But today, we can scale with soul. We can embrace new approaches, and through that, we can move faster without losing depth. And we don't stop there, because great insights don't just sit in a deck. They should fuel creativity. They should drive real impact. And with co-creation, visualization, and workshops, we can really bridge the gap between insight, activation, and even execution. So that's it from us. Thank you very much for listening. I think we have a few minutes, not many, but a few minutes for a Q&A. So I'll now look back into the chat. Versus non with the help of AI, but not necessarily truly. Is that the question? Sorry, Frank. Did you compare the outcome of AI-supported ideation sessions versus non-AI supported ideation sessions? Not truly unexpected, more creative ideas. I mean, I have quite a bit of experience in working in ideation sessions with AI. I think it depends a lot on the prompts you use. So there are some activities in ideation that are sometimes difficult with a group of people who are working within an organization. For example, one technique is imagine brand X was doing something here. That's something that sometimes we find really difficult to do, because we spend a whole day thinking about our category and our brand, and suddenly it's really difficult to imagine how Adidas would develop a new yogurt or whatever that projective ideation technique is that you want to use. AI is really good at that. So throwing in things like or prompts like that in AI can work really well. And I think there are sort of a number of prompts that I find where that AI does that really well, and then it helps to spark creativity in the room. So it's always an interplay between the AI and the people doing the ideation. I think that interplay is sort of where the magic happens.
Maybe just to add on to that, Sven, I think, Frank, we've done last year an experiment with Ricola, and that was also presented at the Global ESOMAR Conference last year in September, where we did compare different routes. What happens when you do ideation with the help of AI? What purely with humans, and what with creatives, like in the ICA network. And the conclusion was that it's really the blend of all three, that they add something each and every one unique to it. So it's definitely a paper we can follow up with, and can share
Yeah.
some of those results with you.
Thank you. Okay. So there's still some notes in the chat. Yes, please feel free to contact us. Thank you very much for listening. And hopefully it was useful to you. And we look forward to, oh, some thumbs up. That's always nice. So we we look forward to any questions and any thoughts and feedback as well, of course. Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
everyone.
much. Thank you,
Bye.
everybody. Bye-bye.